Welcome to PENSDOWN. Here we talk journalism journeys. A lot of things go on before you get to hear the news, but journalists will never talk about them because the principles of news reporting does not permit that they should add their experiences and the things they grapple with in the line of duty. Today we are traveling down south to Malawi, and I've been joined by a colleague. He is a senior journalist and an award-winning journalist who has over 15 years experience in the crafts. His full profile will be displayed to you on the screen while we go through this conversation. My guest today is Mallick Mnela. Welcome, my brother.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Right. I was on the Facebook page of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Malawi, and a 2019 post celebrated you as winning an award. You were then a former Zodiac Broadcasting Station reporter and currently, at that time, an international media correspondent. You won the SADC Media Awards television category, the first prize. And that was on the sidelines of the SADC Heads of State Summit in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Tell us about the story that won you that award and how much work you put into that story.
Well, the SADC award, I think it was a story that I did when I had traveled to the Democratic Republic of Congo in South Kivu. It's the Ben Mavivi area where the Malawi Defense Force is among the military intervention brigade that is fighting rebels there. Okay. So the story was basically about the challenges of war and what were the effects of the intervention brigade in the particular area.
Great. How much of a competition did you fend off before emerging the first prize winner in the television category? Were there, obviously there were other people who also submitted nominations. When you submitted your entry, were you convinced that you had some sort of an edge over the others?
Yeah, I think the distinction was that it was war reporting. You see, because we had been to the front line, so it had been exclusive, and I think very few journalists would have had access to a war zone. So I think that was the uniqueness of that story. Therefore, it had to stand out. I must also mention that the same story had won another award, the Ricardo Ortega Media Prize for the United Nations. I think that's an award that was given by the United Nations Correspondents Association right in New York. So it was really an exceptional piece because it was content that was kind of exclusive in nature. So that's why it stood out. And I should say I was quite convinced that it was really going to stand out. And entering into the contest, I knew that I was going to sail through.
Now let's look at how you got into journalism in the first place. Was it by accident or by design?
All right. So I grew up in Zimbabwe. So growing up in Zimbabwe, I was privileged to be one of the first students to be involved in a project. I think it was funded by UNICEF. They called it the New Generation. So the New Generation was a newspaper publication published in across Zimbabwe in the early 90s. I was really small, a young boy by then. So I was privileged to have been published in that newspaper, The New Generation. So I think I was published. The first piece was a poem, and from then onwards, I think it had been one iteration after the other getting published. So when I got my father retired early, I think it was 91. We migrated to Malawi. So when I got to Malawi, the passion was still within me. So I kept on sending, letters to the editor.
Okay.
And I think the next breakthrough was in 1997. It's when I got to understand how I had to pitch, or how I had to write my stories so that they could stand out, so that they could be published in the letters to the editor. So I remember in 1997, that's when 1997 was a special year for me, because I got published. Like I was in secondary school, Form 2 by then, and I got published, like 5 of my articles got published in different publications in Malawi. Moni magazine, it's a Catholic, it was a Catholic magazine, it's now defunct. Then I got published in Malawi News, I got published in The Nation. So really it excited me, and it kept the fire inside me burning to be a writer at first. I'd always wanted to be an economist, to be honest, but then I think things changed, because immediately after I finished my secondary school, I did not go into college.
Okay.
I interned with another newspaper, The Chronicle. I think when I finished my secondary school in 2000, and when I interned with them, I was told I was good, and they kept me on the internship for another year. Then I got recruited as a correspondent, in-house correspondent. So yeah, until 2006. After 6 years later, that's when I went to study journalism. Pardon me, I had studied for a certificate in journalism, just to understand, but I never considered it to be something that was serious then. But it was until 2006 when I enrolled for the Higher National Diploma with the Malawi Institute of Journalism. That's when I really studied journalism.
You said you wanted to be an economist. Today you are a chartered marketer and a practicing journalist. Now that makes you a man of diverse sides, a man of many parts. Will you say journalism pays? Does it pay? Does journalism pay?
Well, I think I am who I am because of journalism. Because like you say, amongst my credentials, I am a certified marketer with the Chartered Institute of Marketing of the United Kingdom. If you ask me why did I go into marketing in the first place, I would tell you that it was intentional and very strategic, because I have always wanted to own a media house. That has always been my ambition. But I wanted to understand business inside out. I wanted to understand the dynamics of business, and and I can say that it has helped me to understand the concept of media viability. And the media is going through turbulent times right now, and one would be surprised, why does one still want to be a media owner when we know that the times are turbulent? But I think it's because of my understanding of media viability in turbulent times that are making me still, try to push the agenda. So right now I own my own small media company, I Hub Online, which I think I'm proud, because where I am now is where I wasn't when I was employed. So I can say that I'm proud of my achievements, and I believe that the journalism in me has helped me create products or understand what those that I target within the niche that I focus on are interested in. But also, I had to know when to back off because of my understanding of marketing.
Okay.
Because as a journalist, I'm passionate to give it all, but then the marketer in me will always come with a restraining thinking to say, no. This is not sustainable. So, hold your horses, come back, stay on track. So it's kind of multiple personality that has kept me going. But I can say that journalism right now, it's really facing turbulent times. But when you choose to be a media entrepreneur, like that's the way I identify myself.
Yeah.
The media has a lot to offer. And it's how we as journalists are going to tailor our products to respond to the needs, because right now people really want to consume information in different ways.
Okay.
Because that is being shaped by how they are consuming social media. So as journalists, I think we need to tailor our products to align to the needs of media consumers right now. So, and it's no longer about institutionalization. I know journalists in Tanzania, I know journalists in Nigeria that have in Kenya that have quit in the mainstream media to become media entrepreneurs in their own right. On social media, we are seeing a lot of influencers that are not producing content that is media related mostly. I know of one one lady, is it in Nigeria? No, it's Kenya. She's done so well in churning journalism content on social media. And in Zimbabwe, we have seen other media entrepreneurs also leaving mainstream, but also trying to give content that is journalistic, but given in another way. And it's really working for them. So the media, for those that are,
if I may come in here,
outside the box, things
your mention of social media has brought a critical question. How has social media changed the face of journalism?
Well, in a lot of ways. Right now, before news is consumed on a mainstream media channel, it would have been consumed on social media. Yeah. So people that are discerning, people that are really careful of the kind of content that they are consuming, are the ones that are really sticking with the mainstream media. But the excited kind, the kind that would want to consume anything that comes along, are really going away with social media, and that's a majority. That's why you see that sensational content that is shared by so-called influencers will have more reach and more likes and more views than content that is shared by professional curated media that is curated, media that is verified, media that is professionally moderated. So when we talk of an accident, for instance, people would want to see it wouldn't be appropriate for me to show the sorry side of an accident because of the emotional traumas that such content would give to the audience out there. But when a social media influencer, so-called social media influencer, shares the same, you find out that it will rake in thousands of likes, and the viewership would be enormous. Yeah. Why? Because people want to see and watch the raw content that is emotionally traumatizing and ethical from a professional point of view. But that's just what it is. Then when such a scenario happens, then those discerning media consumers, they would rather go to the mainstream media to verify and consume their content in a way that they know will not be harmful to them. They know that it will be sensitive to themselves, but also to members of the bereaved in the event that someone has passed on. Social media has brought in a lot of challenges in terms of also the economic or way the media operates. I mean, who would want to buy content that has been consumed? This is like something that happens now. If you are to read it, you see, so it has affected the economy as well and the dynamic. So it means that the role of journalism has shifted. To go back to your question, it has shifted in terms of how the information, the value addition of the information between now and tomorrow, it really has to be creative and innovative. But also something that I'm excited about is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence has also created room for, it has collapsed barriers to entry in terms of production of quality content, but also there is a lot of rubbish that is being created with the aid of artificial intelligence. So it means that us as journalists will also have to maneuver and move into those spaces of artificial intelligence and see how best we can capitalize on them and utilize them to our advantage. Otherwise, the non-journalists will assume the role of communicators and assume our spaces and occupy the share of mind among the constituents that we must target. So at the end of the day, journalism might lose. But I think journalists are doing exceptionally well in trying to innovate and cope with the challenges that are coming with social media.
Okay. You having done a story, an award-winning story on war, means that you have done a lot in terms of field reporting. How many times, or is there a time your job has put your life in danger, or have you been threatened in the line of duty before?
Yeah. I actually wrote about it. I think a few weeks ago on my Facebook. Yeah, I think that was early in my journalism career. I was a young, youthful journalist in 2000. So in Malawi, we will go through some political, a political period where the second president, Bakiri Muluzi, wanted to amend the constitution to extend his stay in power. So it was called the third term, but also the open term. So, the constitution had a limit of 2 terms. So they wanted to put a third term so that after his 2 terms, he would stay on for the third term. But then others
Obasanjo
were
also
moving.
wanted to do same in Nigeria before he left power.
Yes. So it was through during that time I got kidnapped. I think it's information that is in the public domain. You can find it in the in one of the reports. I think about on media freedom. It's well documented. So I was kidnapped. So they came to the newsroom. They got me. So they were actually surprised that I was a small boy then. I was a teenager. I think I was 17, 18 in 2000. So they were surprised really that I was this young boy. So when they kidnapped me, what they were interested in, they wanted to know who was, who was empowering me, who was sending me. But to be honest, I was just a young boy trying to create a mark early in my career. And I was really trying to adhere to the tenets of journalism and to the values of democracy at that point in time. So no one was sending me, and I kept on telling them, the same, but the police intervened, and I got rescued, and it really was a traumatizing moment for my family more than it was for me. So I remember being called back home, and my parents sat me down and say, you know what, this journalism thing is not really going to help you. So I remember I had to go to take my time off to go to Zimbabwe. They sent me back to my uncle's place in Zimbabwe because they thought that my life was in danger. But I only stayed there for like 2 weeks, and I was back. At my job, and I claimed my job back, and I kept on pushing until I think I just got used, and people got used that that was the way it was. I got beat up a few weeks later by the same guys. It was really a political period where I never wish to go back to, where violence, was perpetrated against the journalists, and so by and by I realized that.
You mean you were
I had
kidnapped twice by the same
realign.
group?
Yeah, by they used to call them the youth. It's like the cadres for the political party. Then it was then ruling party. They called the United Democratic Front. So they were the UDF. They called it the Young Democrats. They used to call them Young Democrats, UDF Young Democrats. So those are the guys that
that's like a political vigilante group.
Surprisingly, yes, yeah. Surprisingly, some of those guys, later on became my friends when the party had been kicked out of government. So we got to talk. Some of them, I remember one of them, you became my neighbor, and we used to meet a lot at the mosque, at the local mosque. So, evidently we had to talk about it, and we had to laugh about it, and we had to move on. So life will, if you survive the beatings and the kidnappings, you get to live and laugh about it some other time. So, but then later on I realized that politics wasn't really my thing. Then I decided to move on to child rights advocacy, which is something that had made who I am today, because it's free, it's flexible, it's more, it brings me back to my roots, because I had worked with, like I said earlier on in the introductory part of the show, that I started as a child journalist. So I have been working with child journalists and advocating for children's rights within the media. And I think it's one thing that I wish I could do until my retirement time.
The first kidnap incident, you were picked up from the newsroom. Is that right?
Yes.
The second one, where were you picked up from?
I was at home. We had gone out to play football with the guys. It was I was young. I wasn't even in my 20s. I can recollect. So I had gone to play football with my colleagues. Then upon return, because our paper used to come out on Monday, and for some reason, it was a newspaper. So what used to happen is that we would work on news stories. It was a weekly, so we would work on investigating the stories during the week. Then on Sundays, it would go to the printers. Then on Monday, it would be on the streets. So for some reason, these guys had their sources perhaps within the printing press, so they would know what story would come on front page and that kind of thing. But then even the political masters would have known that something terrible would be coming in the papers in the next week, because would have been pestering them for their right of reply, for instance. So I still don't have a confession or evidence, tangible evidence. But it is my suspicion that one within the printing press might have leaked.
There was a
what was
mole
going
there.
to come on the next Monday. Then I got beat up on a Sunday. So when my story came out on Monday, I was in hospital. So actually, I remember I was admitted for monitoring. I had a ligament, a rib ligament injury. It wasn't quite intense, but it was there was a cutting in that injury. So they told me that I had to wait until they had to confirm with some X-ray on Monday. But I got scared and I had to escape from the hospital and I had to seek medical attention away from the government hospital. But I think in a few days' time I was okay, so it wasn't that bad.
Okay, let's go back to social media. Social media has created richer bloggers than richer journalists in Africa and possibly beyond. Is there something we as journalists have not done, which is why scarcely trained people in the manipulation of the media are making a fortune out of social media?
Okay, so here are the dynamics. The world is changing and it will keep on changing.
Yes.
The coming in of social media presented a challenge on us as journalism. But you can see that the trends now are challenging to anyone. For instance, the coming in of ChatGPT has challenged not only journalists, but also marketers, also also engineers, programmers,
academics, and the rest.
You see, so now the world, the knowledge economy will face a lot of transformation, more so now with the coming in of artificial intelligence, free for all artificial intelligence. So the dynamics of any sector are defined by the barriers to entry. So journalism was challenged because initially you needed to have a camera, you needed to have lights, you needed to have a broadcasting license, you needed to have all sorts of things. But the coming in of social media meant that you having your Facebook account gives you as much platform or as much authority as somebody with a television license. So it means that you have access to millions of viewers, you have access to an audience. So, however, the challenge came in because journalists were resisting.
In various parts of the world, in Africa precisely, there is the increasing political ownership of the media. So many politicians and political actors are setting up and owning media establishments. What is the picture in Malawi? If it is the case, are we caught in trouble? Africa is still a developing democracy. Is it a time bomb we are putting on our side, which may explode one day on our faces?
Well, politicians in Malawi have owned media houses, but then I've always argued that it is really about how the founder will handle it. For instance, there is Nation Publications Limited, one of Malawi's top 2 newspapers. Nation was founded by Aleke Banda, who happens who happened to be a politician, a cabinet minister in Bakili's government in a long time. But I think he did well in terms of trying to make it as independent as possible, to my recollection. So yeah, politicians, the former president Bakili Muluzi had a TV station and a radio station, and both of them, they survived for as long as he was in power. Their politicians, Professor Bingu Wamtarika the late, he also had a newspaper. He also had a radio station. But as soon as his relevance and power, vanished, the media vanished with him. So politicians will own a platform for their own utility, for their own, for their own gains, for their own, leveraging. But as soon as their power is gone, the media house is gone. So talking about the current status in Malawi, I would say that there are politicians, non-politicians, known to have interests in the media, and there are journalists. For instance, my former boss, Gospel Kazako, who is the immediate past information minister. He wasn't a politician. He wasn't a politician until 2020, when he got appointed from a news boardroom into a cabinet boardroom. So, but then he has since been dropped in the cabinet, and I should think he's back at the media house right now. So there will be journalists who will go into politics. There will be media owners that will go into politics, and there will be politicians that will own media houses. We all know that it's part of the politics cannot function without the media. But then it is the degree of interference, or the degree of meddling that would detect that. But as far as I can tell, the politicians that came outright, or the media institutions that came outright as partisans, they have not survived. But the two examples that I've given you, the late Alec Banda of The Nation, he was a politician. He was a journalist who turned into a politician, but his media house is still up and running because he allowed it to thrive in its own independence. Likewise, Gospel Kazako, my former boss, who was appointed minister by the incumbent president, I think he tried really hard to make it independent, but people will have their own opinions once you are associated with a certain political party.
That's right.
But from me, as a media person, I think I have known the media house to be independent, and I've seen that it has still maintained the semblance of independence. But politicians, with the coming in of social media, they have no influence really, even if they own a TV, if they own the radio, because the populace is now very much aligned towards social media.
Okay. A quick one. You have done over 15 years. If we are to go back into time, 20 years, are you still going to choose journalism? Let me make this two in one. And my second question: have you at any point in the line of duty been approached with a bribe to compromise the facts of any story you were doing?
Okay. The first question, would I do it any different? I'd say I have had an amazing journey as a journalist. The only difference, though, is that I started enjoying journalism when I went solo. I've been on BBC as a contributor during the 2019-2020 elections. I have been on multiple fellowships. I've been on the Jam Lab fellowship by the Wits University. I've been on the Chevening. I'm a Chevening fellow at the University of Westminster, cadres of the British government. I have I've been on the ICFJ fellowship, the Elevate fellowship. And I'm also currently on the London School of Economics fellowship on small media houses on artificial intelligence. They call it journalism AI. So all this learning and networking and new opportunities have really reignited my passion for journalism. Right now, I'm working on new innovations in the media space that are fascinating. Trying to see how we can use chatbots for news dissemination. It's something that has not been done mostly in Africa, and we are trying to do it. So it's to me, it's really been fulfilling. Only that it has become more fulfilling now that I'm trying to walk or to sail in uncharted waters. So that's why it's more thrilling, more exciting, and it's more exciting and it's more rewarding because I'm getting recognized. So I believe that I've been identified for the fellowships that I've been mentioning because I stand out, because perhaps my ideas stand out. They are kind of unique. I believe really that's the trick. Have I been bribed? Have I been approached
attempted a bait with a bribe?
Okay, to be honest, I think the most difficult time was when I early in my career, when I was just starting out. You know, I was broke. I wasn't even on the payroll, but I was approached. Why are you doing this? You see, these guys are beating you. Why don't you get this? Blah 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 blah. I remember to have been offered a mobile phone back in the day. Yeah, a mobile phone was very expensive during the time. So when they offered me the phone, I was like, okay. Then I took it to my editor. Then when I presented it, they said, no, you cannot take this mobile phone. So you have to return it, and we are going to get you one instead, because we cannot afford to compromise the situation. So they tried to make me understand. So since then, it's really been about integrity. And okay, so I know that sometimes journalists are tempted. Sometimes they receive money. The only money that I would acknowledge to have received is that money. You say they would invite you to some place, and they say allowances. You see, they say allowances
when you go to cover events, and then afterwards they'll give it to you in an envelope. What is the local name? In Ghana, it is called Sole, which is the shortened form for solidarity. In Nigeria and Cameroon, they call it a brown envelope. In Malawi, what name do you give it?
We just christen it. We just sanitize it by saying allowance. Sanitized by the term allowance, but otherwise they call logistics. Yeah. If I had to use Sole in Malawi, we call it logistics. So so basically that's what happens. They will invite you to an event. You cover them, then they will provide an envelope, and you have to sign somewhere. And it's really something that is normalized. Honestly, it's something that you wouldn't describe as odd, regardless of it being described in the code of conduct as checkbook journalism. It's checkbook journalism because you are receiving something in the event. But then what normally happens is that this money, this envelope, really does not have any influence on most journalists, because it's more like a tradition that what I write is what really I must write, because if the
story doesn't get published, won't the event organizers come after you, the journalists who received the logistics? Won't they call to question? Won't they call to ask?
I don't think it would go to that extent, because the prerogative or the final say on what goes through is will be determined by a number of actors. For instance, during my last few years as a mainstream journalist working in an institution, I was an editor. So the story would come from a reporter. It go through the chief reporter. The chief reporter will submit it to the sub editor. By the time it arrives to me, I'll just mostly determine the space. You know, I'm just in charge of the real estate. Real estate to say, do I use this story? When I make that decision, you know, my senior editor will come on my shoulder. Then we are going to go through the copy together. So whether someone has received money, it really doesn't have an effect on the final product, to really be honest, unless it's about dropping the story altogether, which doesn't make sense because they wouldn't have invited them in the first place. But you know, those are the dynamics that that work in our part of the world, where journalists really try to top up their earnings with the allowance that they get from sources. It's not only politicians, by the way. It's interest groups,
newsmakers generally.
Newsmakers generally, they do that.
Now, there is a lot of attrition in journalism. I know of Ghana, Nigeria, Cameroon. So many qualified top professionals in the field are abandoning the craft. Some of them are going to public relations, corporate communications, and for some, any other area that will welcome them. From where you sit, with your wealth of experience and the interactions you have with colleagues and even juniors, what do you think is accounting for this high rate of attrition in journalism? You may want to end your answer with something short on what represents your golden memories these years you have been in the crafts.
The pay is awful in journalism, to be honest. It's very few institutions that are managing to generate revenue. I think it's about, you know, the media revenue models, revenue generating models. They really have transitioned and they've changed, and most of the institutions have not yet aligned their media models based on what's happening. But also, it's also about institutions that used to pump in a lot of money in advertising in mainstream media. They've created their own value chain in terms of reaching out to the audiences. So they've cut on advertising spend, and they've their own ways, direct ways of reaching out to their clients. So they'll have their own they are getting journalists, right? They're getting journalists from the newsroom, putting them in their boardroom, and giving them a small budget. You see, giving them a small budget to manage a campaign on their social media platforms, promotions on their social media platforms. So what they would spend on 2 adverts, they are spending for 6 months on their platform. So it means that now that corporates have a direct link to their own audiences, it means that the relevance of the media is becoming obsolete by the day. So that's why the revenues are declining, and as the revenues are declining, the pay grades and the pay is also becoming stagnant. And as the pay is becoming stagnant, it's becoming vulnerable to inflation, and you know, there is really little that can be done other than finding ways of really trying to reinvent the relevance of the media. And the last part of the question again?
I said your golden memories, these years you have practiced, almost 20 years.
Well, other than the free food, the free traveling, yeah, I think journalism is really exciting. Yeah, I have traveled overseas because of journalism. I've traveled to Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Zambia, all over. I've traveled because of journalism, and I've been to places that I wouldn't have been. I've been to each and every district in Malawi, not because I am a tourist or I'm into tourism, no, but because of journalism. I have whatever I have because of journalism. So It's really been an exciting journey for me personally, and all the memories that I've had as an individual, they are centered around journalism, and yeah, I don't think I couldn't have been, I couldn't have, I could ask for anything else other than being a journalist. That's because I just have beautiful, beautiful memories. Wherever I travel to, wherever I go, people that I know, people that I have had the opportunity to get acquainted with, it's all because of journalism. So yeah,
Maybe my
journalism
wrap up, comment question, sorry. Would you support calls for the licensing of journalists? Should journalists be licensed?
If you had asked me the question last year, I would have said yes. But if you ask me now, I would say we are a bit too late for that, because do you know we've got individual social media influencers who have large following?
Yes.
Who have large following, more than some non-media institutions.
A lot of them.
Then, exactly. Then the point is, if we are to say these people need to be regulated, then are we going to apply the law in retrospect? Would that be fair? I think it's all about understanding that things have changed and things will continue to change.
Yeah.
The dynamics are pointing towards journalism to create influencers of their own and reclaim their relevance. And they must do this. We must. I'm not supposed to even exclude myself, but we must reclaim our glory by trying to accept that things are changing and things will keep on changing. And those that are going to embrace the changes are going to lead the way. Influencers are who they are today because they dared to embrace the technology earlier. And it's all about us, trying to correct the mistakes of what we did and move on. Trying to hide behind regulation will only create challenges and will only delay our war to reclaim our relevance. So I believe that it's all about reclaiming our relevance by doing what is right. And what is right now is to be relevant and stay relevant. Yeah.
This has been PENSDOWN. Thanks for joining us. Today we went down south to Malawi, and my colleague Mallick Mnela, he's an award-winning journalist, an AI enthusiast, a child rights activist, a chartered marketer, and he hoped to have become an economist. I don't know whether that is still on the plate one of these days. Maybe sometime, someday, he will want to realize or actualize that dream of becoming an economist. He's been our guest today, and we've talked his journalism journey, the ups and downs, the challenges, the rough roads, and the high mountains he has climbed. He's said it all here. Thanks for joining us. Thank you very much, sir, for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here.
Right. We'll be back next time with another edition. Here we'll have another colleague join us, and the topic or the subject matter will still be PENSDOWN, journalism journey. Bye for now.